Good afternoon again. So I'm Amrin Kerry. I'm an approved mental health professional and I'm currently warranted with Birmingham City Council. Today I'll be talking about the mental health crisis breathing space. It's the perspective from an approved mental health professional, and what we're going to be doing is just moving forward through some slides. You will be able to have access to these slides when we're finished. Also, because I'll be delivering the webinar, if you do have any questions, if you put those questions in the chat, my colleagues will be monitoring the chat, and then we'll have an opportunity to do some questions and answers afterwards when I've gone through the PowerPoint slides. So this webinar today is just a recap about the mental health crisis breathing space. So a quick recap is qualifying treatment is being detained under the Mental Health Act, and where in the community the treatment is equitable to the same treatment as if they've had been detained in hospital. Okay, so moving forward to the next slide, I've already introduced myself. Just a quick introduction. So the mental health crisis breathing space offers individuals who are in mental health crisis treatment and in some kind of debt problems, which is temporary, and it also offers some debt respite enforcement. It lasts for the crisis treatment period, and once notified of the end date, there's an additional 30 days cooling off period. An approved mental health professional is by regulation required to certify that the mental health crisis treatment is qualifying, and an AMP can also refer to the service. These slides predominantly look around the regulations for the mental health crisis breathing space. So part one looks at the debt respite scheme regulations. It outlines the general framework, including key definitions, the roles and responsibilities of the debt advice providers and the creditors. It's also the eligibility criteria for debts and debtors to receive the scheme. So it also explains the legal effects of the moratorium, such as restrictions on the creditor's actions, extension of deadlines, limitation periods, the review process and cancellation process, as well as information sharing requirements. The regulation part two, that focuses more about the breathing space and the mental health services. So in this section, it talks about specialist mental health services, and this can refer to a varied mental health services provided by crisis home treatment teams, the liaison mental health teams, the community mental health teams, and other specialist mental health services. They vary in different local authorities, so when AMPs are looking at the referrals to ensure that they liaise with these services and ensure that they are providing crisis mental health support. Moving forward into the part three of the section of the regulations, the debt respite scheme. This is more around the administration side of the regulation and the responsibilities of the Secretary of State and the duties that they must uphold. So it kind of covers the information contained on the electronic system. Section 5 looks at the creditor and is not entitled to information contained on the register or otherwise held by the Secretary of State about other creditors of the debtor, what we owe to the other creditors, and the debtor's usual residential status. So just some sensitive data that they don't have access to. See some messages coming and going. Continuing the part three, the administration side, it also looks at the Secretary of State, and they must delete from the register all information concerning the service where 15 months have lapsed from the date on which the moratorium has ended and was cancelled under these regulations. The register also is maintained by the Secretary of State, and must have, and this is very important for AMPs when they're looking at the approval stages, just to ensure that the appropriate information is recorded, because It's required in part of the regulations that we have up-to-date personal details, the details of the creditors, any trading addresses, dates of all the requested information, and all this must be collated and recorded in the form, which will help us in processing the application. We will also be looking at any debt advice providers and sending out all notifications to the Secretary of State, and it's all done through this electronic system. So it's really important that you do provide all the appropriate information when you are completing the application form. Just going to move on to the next slide. So moving forward to part 4 of the regulation, this is all supplemental information. So it focuses on more around the quality assurance, the reviewing and monitoring of the responsibility. It's more around the focus responsibility of the Treasury. So I have delivered this same training prior, so you will have access to these slides as mentioned before. So I'm just going through these slides quite briefly because I'm of the understanding that there's quite a lot of questions coming through, so it gives you more of an opportunity to ask your questions and we try and answer them. So this stage of the supplemental stage, it looks at more of the first report that was, we're currently in the process of waiting for the report that's been devised on the 4th of May. So we will look at all the information collated over the last 5 years. It covers the legality side of it and what is underpinning the report when it is published. It's going to set out the objectives that's intended by this regulatory provision. It's going to look at assessing the objectives and what has been achieved. It's going to be looking at the objectives of the remaining appropriate and those objectives, and another way of the onerous regulatory provision. It will be looking at terminology, certain sections, and our findings and what we've achieved over the last 5 years. So you following on from this webinar, you will be getting quite a lot of questionnaires and a lot of information collation kind of emails, which we would really appreciate you responding to and filling in as much as you can, because it will help in regards to the next stages of the mental health crisis breathing space. One of the also, so from circulating and working with quite a few different local authorities, a lot of people, a lot of AMPs and even team managers have had discussions with me about some of the concerns and the worries, especially the K versus Lee case law. So we've talked quite a lot about this case law. We're only touching on it briefly today, but I'm just going to go through the main points from the AMP and the MPOX perspective. And the main outcome of this case law is to complete the relevant checks, just to ensure that the debtors or the applicant is receiving mental health crisis treatment, either that be in the community or as an inpatient. It's just ensuring that you're doing your appropriate checks to make your accountable decision making, and that accountable decision is whether they're eligible for mental health crisis breathing space or not. In this particular case, the court's decision and the subsequent case have provided clarity for debt advisors and AMPs. It's emphasising the importance of rigorous adherence to the debt respite scheme, ensuring that the scheme works and it's intended for vulnerable people who are in mental health crisis. What the AMPs need to know is that the mental health crisis breathing space protects people in mental health crisis from debt enforcement. It lasts for the crisis treatment period plus 30 days, which I've already spoke about earlier. AMP certification is a key safeguard and it's not a legal risk itself to the professionals. Legal clarification from the High Court case in 2023 confirmed that the mental health crisis breathing space must relate to the serious mental health crisis treatment. This does not mean detention is always required, and creditors can challenge only if the process was clearly incorrect or is in unfair prejudice. What this means for AMPs is that you should continue to certify where the person is experiencing mental health crisis. The mental health crisis breathing space supports recovery and stability. The courts are addressing misuse in exceptional cases, not routine AMP decisions. And finally, no personal liability is for the AMPs acting in good faith within personal judgment in line with the guidance. And I think that's pretty much everything from us. So we've kind of gone through the PowerPoint slides. This is the opportunity now for question and answers. I understand there's quite a few bouncing around through the chat. So myself and Raluca will be here to support in answering the questions as best as we can. And if we can't, then we will get back to you all with responses.
Perfect. Thank you, Amrin, for that. So the first question I'm going to direct to Raluca, if that's okay. So we've had a question from Ayula, and she said, I would like to know about the AMP referral process, please.
Thank you, Sophia. Hi, everyone. I'm not sure exactly what this means, AMP referral process. So if this means how they should refer through our portal, then yeah, I think I can answer that. So we have digitized the HMT form. That's part of the debt respite regulations. Anyone who fits the referrer criteria can create an account on our portal and fill in the referral form. It needs to contain the details of the AMP and an electronic signature, the details of the patient, which will become our client, and the details of the MPOC. Once the approved mental health professional has signed the referral form, it will automatically come through into our system. It will create a case record for that client, and we will start the eligibility checks to establish if that person meets the criteria to be entered into mental health crisis breathing space. There's obviously another route because, as we know, sometimes technology can be temperamental. So if things don't work that way, referrals can be submitted via email. And I'm sure, Sophia, if you don't mind, you can put the email address, please, on the chat. I don't want to say something that's not up to date. But hopefully
of course,
that
no
answers.
problem.
Thank you. Hopefully that answers the question. Thank you.
So Amrin, I'm going to direct this question to yourself, if that's okay. This question is from Chloe, and she has asked if a patient is open to the crisis team, but not referred by the AMP service, how would we support the patient with being referred to breathing space?
So you don't have to be open to the AMP service for a referral for mental health crisis breathing space. If they're open to crisis home treatment, one of the care coordinators within the team, one of the nurses, can complete the mental health crisis breathing space referral form through the online portal that Raluca just explained. You will be able to access the AMP, so you'll have details for your local AMP service. So normally if you just call through to them and get the duty AMP's details, you'll be able to record that. Or if one of the AMPs who are involved, when you do speak to the AMP team, they will provide their details for you to add their details to the referral form.
Perfect. Thank you, Amrin. And then if I can stick with yourself, if that's okay, we've got another question from Lorraine, who's asked, often the information for quality assurance and monitoring details are not always available, and that AMPs usually are just aware that there's debt. So in this instance, what should they do if this happens?
Oh, sorry.
No, it's all right,
So,
don't worry.
well, they need to go back to the nominated point of contact because they're the ones who are going to have the direct conversations with the person they're making the referral for. So if they usually are the people that provide those up-to-date information, and if not, then they need to go and get those details for you.
Perfect, thank you. And then we've had another question from Chloe, who says, we don't care coordinate in crisis. Will any practitioner be able to do this?
It has to, so there's a list of criteria who the nominated point of contact can be. Usually if you're one of the nurses within the team, either band 6 or band 7, you'll be able to make the referral.
Thank you. So that seems to be all the questions at the moment in the chat. If you obviously do have any more questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. And I also have some frequently asked questions, which might obviously help spark some more questions from yourselves. So Raluca, if it's okay for you to take this one. So how long does the mental health crisis breathing space last?
Thank you, Sophia. So I think it was mentioned, Amrin mentioned it. It lasts for as long as the client, we call it the client, so the patient receives mental health crisis treatment, plus an extra 30 days of protection. There is a caveat here. So if we don't get a response to the interval checks that we have to do every 20 to 30 days, to have confirmation that of the continuation of the crisis treatment, then when the time limit for responding expires, that's when we will have to end mental health crisis breathing space for that client. So there's a lot of responsibility on the shoulders of the MPOC as per the regulations, and if by any means they cannot answer, then it has serious repercussions for that particular client, because they don't benefit from those extra 30 days of protection.
Perfect, thank you. And I have another question for yourself, Amrin. So if the patient lacks the mental capacity to consent to a referral and there is no one in place to make such decisions on their behalf, how much involvement are AMPs expected to have with regards to any best interest decisions to proceed with this scheme?
So we've come across this question quite a few times before. We have actually got loads of information about this on the website with frequent questions and answers. Now, it's not at the AMP's responsibility. So, in this profession, AMPs, social workers, whoever makes the decision that the person is unable to demonstrate the mental capacity to make the decision in regards to the mental health crisis breathing space, it's actually their responsibility to make the best interest decision. So that will be down to the nominated point of contact. And then the AMP has the conversation and consults with the nominated point of contact, because they're the ones who are going to be triaging as to whether this person is eligible for mental health crisis breathing space or not. They can link in with the AMP team or an AMP or a social worker that's connected to the ward, but it will be the initial person that's making the referral.
Perfect, thank you. Raluca, I can see you've answered another point in the chat as well. Are you okay just to share your answer, if that's all right?
Yeah. So we were asked. So Lorraine said, unfortunately, we do not always have an MPOC initially, so the AMP has to take that role, which is perfectly fine. It fits with the regulations, and often we only have details such as payday loans. And I think that's all right, because once we receive the referral, as part of processing it and completing the eligibility checks, we will also run credit reference reports to find out all the eligible debts the client has. However, it is useful to have information in section 4 about creditors that we cannot locate on the credit reference files. And I'll give a couple of examples here. So if the patient tells you that they have rent arrears, or they are subject to possession proceedings or eviction, we can't find the name of the landlord or the balance owed on the credit reference files. So those are information essentially that we need And if they are included in Section 4, then we can expedite the process and stop that eviction or possession proceeding sooner rather than later. Similarly, sometimes we have Section 4 with council tax arrears. Again, it would be useful to know the name of the local authority they owe council tax, because this sort of information is not held by the credit reference agencies. I hope that kind of answers it a bit more indeed. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Raluca. Amrin, back to yourself, if that's okay. So as an AMP yourself, are there any tools that are available or that you use to determine whether someone qualifies for treatment and the mental health crisis breathing space?
So I think it's down as from the AMP's perspective, it's very united. It's your Section 13 consideration all the time. So it's liaising with the crisis home treatment team. Quite interestingly, we are actually currently devising a checklist. My colleagues and I, we've devised a kind of provisional checklist, which we're in the process of approving, and then we're going to start circulating to AMP teams and AMP services once agreed. And that will be a useful tool as well of what to consider when you do get your mental health crisis breathing spaces come through. But it's just the basic consideration process of when, say, for example, a mental health act assessment referral comes in, and then you're looking at all the support, whether they're open to the crisis home treatment team, what discussions they've had with them, the information that they've provided in regards to the finances, and whether it's the crisis home treatment team and not a long-term mental health care service. So it's just looking at those kind of specific details just to kind of clarify that they are receiving crisis home treatment or some form of crisis mental health support.
Perfect, thank you. And then Raluca, back to yourself, if that's okay. So say, for example, you have two different patients who have similar debts, but one is accepted onto the scheme and one is not. What are the odds of an MHCBS application being declined, or why do you think one maybe was declined and one was not declined?
Thank you, Sophia. I think the main reason for declining an application is usually that it doesn't hold the essential AMP signature, or the person who signed it is not an AMP as defined in the legislation. Or sometimes it's the issue with the AMPOC role. So as it was said in the chat, we really do appreciate when AMPs take on the AMPOC role, because we know it is extra work. But sometimes when we ask so let's say we've got an AMPOC and it doesn't meet the criteria, so it's not one of the prescribed roles. The AMPOC is not a care coordinator, it's not an AMP, or is not a mental health nurse. So the process that we have in place to try and help as many clients as possible is to go to the approved mental health practitioner and ask if they want to fulfill the MPOC role. But sometimes we don't get an answer. So that's when we will have to kind of decline the application. For me, I think that's the most common scenario that I've seen.
Perfect, thank you. And then one more question for yourself, Amrin, if that's okay. So as an approved mental health professional, do you have to get written consent from your patient, or can it be verbal, or what consent do you need?
So it's just part of the assessment process. So either that's through the MPOC, that they've had that verbal consent, or you could, as AMPs, it depends at your discretionary level, whether you want to have direct contact with the patient, the person, have the chat with them to see if they're still consenting, or to accept the nominated point of contact assessment and their professional opinion that they're able to consent. You can run with either.
Perfect, thank you. I am aware we've got around 4 minutes left of this webinar. So if you do have any more questions, please feel free to get them in the chat now. If obviously it gets to 12:30 or even after 12:30 and you think to yourselves that you've got a question, please feel free to email us at support@mhcbs.co.uk, and we'll obviously be able, more than happy to answer your questions there. Also as well, we have had a few messages in regards to whether these slides will be shared after the webinar and the recording as well. These absolutely will be. We'll do some follow-up communications for you all, and there'll be some links there. And this slideshow will also be available as well on our content library, if you've not seen it already. I'm trying to think, is there anything else at this point? I think we've covered quite a lot of the frequently asked questions as well. So Amrin or Raluca, is there anything else you want to include?
I just wanted to add, oh, sorry, Raluca.
No,
I
you
just
go
wanted
ahead.
to I just wanted to add, moving forward from this webinar, we are going to be circulating a lot of questionnaires to people who have been attending the webinars, just to get some feedback from yourselves. Please, can I urge you all to you know, respond to them, to fill them in as best as you can and get back to us, because it helps us generate the knowledge base from these webinars, so we can kind of incorporate in future webinars and kind of tailor them to how you would like them moving forward. But please do, when you get the emails from us, please do complete the questionnaires and send them back to us. They're very, very important, valuable for us.
No, absolutely. Thank you for that, Amrin. Sorry, Raluca.
No worries. And what I wanted to add is that our tech team have been working really hard to make improvements to the portal and our systems. We had yesterday a presentation for the internal team, and we're going to test those changes. And I think they will be rolled out over the summer. And the next webinar, my understanding is going to be around presenting the portal and its new capabilities. So hopefully no more issues with trying to submit an application. So at least the technology will be on our side.
No, perfect. Thank you for that, Raluca. So I'm aware now it's 29 minutes past 12. So I don't think there's really any time for any more questions. But as we've already said, if you do, once this webinar is finished, if you do have any more questions, please feel free to email us at support@mhcbs.co.uk. And also feel free to visit our website, mhcbs.co.uk, and we've got a content library on there with different assets that will be useful for you. We've got our knowledge library as well. And then obviously we'll be sharing the recordings and the slideshow for yourselves after this webinar. Thank you so much for everyone attending, and thank you, Amrin, for presenting, and Raluca for asking the questions as well.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you for
Thank you,
attending.
everyone.
Have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Take care,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.